Hello, hello everyone. My name is Lisa Rowe. I am the CEO of Support After Abortion, and I am grateful to be among you today. I wanted to personally welcome you to our Support After Abortion Healing Network weekly Facebook Live event. You are going to hear personal testimonies, stories of restoration, how other people are providing restoration, and it is our hope that we can spread the message of hope and healing far and wide. I am so excited to introduce you to Karen Barbito, our program director. She is going to be interviewing someone so amazing today, and you are going to enjoy and leave enlightened, empowered, and equipped.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Lisa, for that glowing introduction. It never gets old. I'm just so grateful to be here as well. This is the Healing Network weekly Facebook Live show. And as the 14 or 15 weeks previous, we have another really awesome guest for you today. We have Jane Abbate. She is the founder of Messy Miracles and the author of Where Do Broken Hearts Go? An after abortion healing program curriculum. So thank you, Jane, for being here. It's so good to finally get to meet you.
Oh, it's a blessing to be here, and thank you for the invitation, Karen.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So why don't you tell us just a little about yourself? How did you, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure, sure. So right now I'm joining you from Richmond, Virginia, and I've been here about 5 years, but I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, lived there my whole life, had a professional career as a banker, and then over 20 years as a professional leadership coach. And I moved down here to Richmond to retire with my husband, Bill. And we love it here. It's been a wonderful, wonderful transition.
I've lived in Pittsburgh twice. I worked for Westinghouse when I was in the nuclear field. I lived in
Oh, my goodness.
Monroeville, Plum
Yes.
Borough area at one point, and then in South Hills.
Well, I was a North Hills kind of girl, but I know exactly what you're talking about. Oh, so we're neighbors. We
Yes,
probably were at some point.
man,
How
I
great
tell
is
you, it's
that?
so cool to meet people that have lived in places where we've also lived. So
For
I know that
sure.
you have a personal testimony. I mean,
I do.
so why don't we just start there? Start with your personal testimony and
Sure.
why you're even on this show today.
Sure. So my story begins with a dream that I had as a little girl. And I was the youngest of four daughters of middle class parents. I was raised in the Catholic Church. And I had the dream that one day I was going to grow up and I was going to be a teacher. And then I was going to marry the love of my life. And his name was Tommy. He didn't know I was alive, by the way, but anyway. And I was going to have two daughters, and their names were going to be Linda and Kathy, and life was going to be so wonderful. And I grew up without, much going on other than I was incredibly shy. Pretty smart, did well in school, but very shy around boys. Never went to the prom, never had a date until I went to college. And when I went to college, I remember saying, this is going to be different. I am going to be different. And so I forced myself to talk to boys and party, and I did it very well. I partied a lot, um, had a good time, and had a boyfriend that was a nice young man. And when I got out of college, I started working for a bank, and I found out shortly after that new job that I was pregnant. And I had, in those days, looked at the yellow pages and called what I believed to be was a Planned Parenthood uh, place in downtown Pittsburgh. And when I found out I was pregnant, it was just that cold fear that came over me about, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I can't tell anybody I'm pregnant. I'm a nice girl. I've got this great job. I don't want to, I like this boy, but I didn't want to get married. And I just remember feeling the panic of what am I going to do? And I was directed to an abortion decision. I don't remember considering anything else. I was just so afraid. And there's very, very little that I remember from that first abortion, Karen. I have some vague memories of being in the clinic, of during the procedure, and how physically painful it was and how scared I was. I think someone held my hand. Um, but I don't remember most of anything else. Um, and I don't even remember what happened afterward, except I know I must have picked up my life and went back to work and continued to party and date and started dating another young man. And at about age 25, I found out I was pregnant again. And it's hard for some people to understand how you could find yourself like in the same place twice, but there I was.
Mhm.
And the same fear, the same panic came over me. And this time, don't know why, I talked to my gynecologist. And I think when I look back, I was trying for a different result. But I again ended up this time in a hospital. I had an overnight stay and had an abortion. I think it might have been because it was the baby was more developed, was older. I'm not sure. I don't remember any of that. Um, and again, continued on with my life. Went back to work. Don't remember thinking about it, and continued in my career. My career was rising. I was doing very, very well, promotion after promotion, financially doing well, dating, but never really clicking with anyone. Finally, I began dating someone who was married, and I just fell head over heels for this man. And once again, I found myself pregnant for the third time. And when I went to him and said I was pregnant, don't worry, I'll take care of it. Um, he agreed, and I was scheduled for my third and had my third abortion. He wasn't available that day to take me, so I went by myself. And the only memory I have of that is the phone call when he said he couldn't take me. And then afterward, we were eating in a Chinese restaurant, and we never talked about it.
Yeah.
Um,
Let me stop just for a second, Jane.
yeah,
First of all, our situations are very similar. You know, the panic, the not really thinking it through. I wasn't pro-choice, pro-life. I was pro-me, and like
yeah,
found
yeah.
out on Wednesday,
Great way to say
had
it.
the procedure on Friday, back in class on Monday. Life went
Yeah.
on, or so I thought, right?
Yeah.
But so you mentioned 3 abortions. I'm just wondering, what was that like for you? Was the first one the hardest? Or I mean, can you just tell us what walking through 3 like that, how that was for you?
Yeah. So because I'm one of the women who have very little memory of my abortion experiences, and that's true. Some of us don't remember much. Some of us remember vividly. For me, I don't remember thinking about, oh, this is my second, oh, this is my third. I just knew that I was afraid and I had to do something.
Yeah.
The realization that there were three came much, much later. And that's when I was thinking, oh, I must be, I mean, how could I have done this? I must be this really horrible person for someone to do one, but for me to have three. And so the realization of that and the impact of it was much later. And I think it kept the pain and the fear like really
Yeah.
burying me.
And that's exactly how it was for me too. It wasn't until I went through my healing program, the very first one, that I ever thought that any of it was tough for me. Right?
Yeah.
It didn't
Thank
seem
you.
like it was difficult at all. I mean, it was not painful. I don't remember being overly emotional about it until
Mm-mm.
little glimpses of what the truth was about the
Yeah.
actual process rose to the surface when I went through healing. So, how long after your abortions before you got connected with a healing program, or what was your life like after that last abortion, and how did it move
Right.
forward into healing?
Yeah, so interestingly, I wasn't aware that I had problems, but the people around me sure did. I never told a soul. The only person who ever knew about any of the abortions was the father of the third child. My parents, my sisters, no friend. So but the people that around me knew me as a hard driving boss who could just be really intense, who was demanded so much, everything had to be perfect. I eventually did get married a few years after my third abortion, and my first husband, we are now divorced. He certainly experienced the anger, the sudden rages that I would have, the difficulty with intimacy, and my really kind of my decision that, well, I just wouldn't be a good mother. So I don't know if we should have children. And this was after, we thought we were, and completely different than that dream for me as a little girl.
Mhm.
Um, so I lived my adult life. I think the other people paid the price, or at least it seemed like they did. But my anxiety kept mounting and mounting. And so in my church, I was going to the Catholic church. I saw the reviews or the ads for Rachel's Vineyard retreat. And I saw those a couple times. I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, everybody knows this is me. This is why it's in there. And that panic that they would know me. But it took me a couple of times over a few years to finally have the courage to pick up the phone and call, talk to a counselor. And that was in 1999. So it was about, I would say, 15 or more years since my last abortion that I went through a Rachel's Vineyard retreat. And that changed everything for me. It just changed everything.
Yeah,
It
that's
was the
awesome.
best thing, the best move that I could make, and one of the most difficult
Yeah.
moves I could make.
So if you're watching and you've had an abortion and you've never told anybody and you're really struggling and the fear of just reaching out for help is overwhelming you and keeping you from picking up that phone, please listen to Jane's and my testimony. It is so worth it. The emotional pain that you'll experience through healing is temporary, but the breakthrough and freedom that comes afterward is a lifetime. It will change you forever. So please, if you're listening and you're struggling, pick up the phone and call or text our Hope line. It's on the screen for you right now. So, Messy Miracles and your book, how did that all evolve? So, when you started to notice that you were struggling after abortion, and
Yeah.
you found Rachel's Vineyard, then what took place? Did you find out what else was out there? What prompted you to write a book?
Yeah. Well, so fortunately, I was able to become part of the Rachel's Vineyard team in Pittsburgh. And so I was able to be a team member on future retreats. And that continued my healing, but it also softened my heart for those of us that are struggling with abortion, both men and women that I saw and experienced in the groups. And as my heart was softened, as my thirst for knowing Jesus on a personal level just grew, I was praying more. And the best I can say is that the Holy Spirit started talking to me and moving. And I kept hearing in my mind about these emotions and reminding or causing me to think about the different emotions that I'd experienced. By that time, I was a professional coach. I had quit my professional job. I had become divorced. It was all part of peeling away kind of the mess that I created in my life. And as I started to, through the grace of God, sort through and become healed and like improve my life, and the messes weren't driving me, I became aware that God was really working a miracle in me. And that's where Messy Miracles came from, that there's no mess too big, there's nothing too terrible, too sordid that that our good Lord can't heal. And so I can say it's the Holy Spirit dropped that in. And I'm
That's so
living proof. I'm like one of the messiest.
That is so awesome because the title of my presentation in the conference that we just had was God is bigger than your mess, so we both have gone through experiences and created all kinds of mess in our life, right? And it's through healing and repentance and a relationship with God that he just restores it 100-fold. So I absolutely love that. If you want to check out Jane, she can be found at messymiracles.com. Is that right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
messymiracles.com. So that is
Right.
awesome. And for those of you watching, if you've never heard of the book, let me just lay it out there for you. The book that Jane Abbate wrote, it's called Where Do Broken Hearts Go? And you've heard me tell over and over again at the beginning of my journey that I just was out there researching what was offered around the country. And I came across her book, and it's really original because of the way that it is laid out. It's laid out by emotion. So tell me, who were you writing that book for, Jane? Because it's so different from every other curriculum that I've come across, which is very same topics, pretty much in the same order, just presented a little different. Yours is so original. Who did you write that for?
Well, I wrote it for women and men like me who didn't connect with abortion through the idea that it was a pregnancy or that it was even an abortion. I just knew that my life was a mess,
Hmm.
that I had a constant crippling anxiety. I was angry. I would cry for hours, so sad and not know why. And I just felt this interior sense of shame. So I wrote it for those who, yes, there's something going on in my life. Well, maybe it's this abortion, but you just can't maybe connect to it that way. But you connect to it through your emotions and through your experience. So the book goes through 19 different emotions
Mhm.
that women and men experience after abortion. It's not that they're written in any particular order, but I share a little bit about my experience and then just talk about why might we feel numb, or how does heartbreak come into this? Or sure, we talk about guilt and shame, but why did I feel so confused? What about my anxiety and my anger? But Karen, it wasn't just about the difficult emotions that the Holy Spirit was prompting me to write about. As my healing continued, I began to experience real relief and freedom and, believe it or not, joy. So the book isn't just about what I would call the difficult emotions. It's about the emotions, the whole gambit of it that you feel and where God wants you to be. And that's what my passion is. And that's what your passion is, and why I love Support After Abortion, is that we know, we have hope that it is possible to lead a beautiful life, even after abortions.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's so true. Gosh, I have so many questions going through my head right now for you. So let's back up. Well, first of all, let me talk to the people that are watching. So this book, from what I just heard Jane say, is for that person that comes to you that thinks that her abortion was the right decision and doesn't understand why she's sad afterwards, doesn't understand why it's hard for her to get out of bed afterwards, doesn't understand why she's regretting it afterwards, why she wishes she could go back and make a different decision. This is a great book to connect that woman with, so she can start, like weeding through those emotions to really get a better understanding of why she's feeling the way that she is. So I think we have a link for the book. If we can show that on the screen and leave that up for a little bit. This is a second edition, and it includes what does it have with it, Jane? This new revised book?
Well, it's a combination of the 19 emotions, and then there's a study journal with it. And we'll be running through Support After Abortion, small groups where you can work through it. And so there's a workbook and a journal that's included.
Yeah, and since you mentioned that, I'll say it now. So we do have virtual groups on our website. You can find them at www.supportafterabortion.com. And Jane is going to facilitate her book for 2 virtual groups coming up in August and September. So if you want to go through a healing group with the author of the book, this is your opportunity. Just go to our website and sign up for Jane's. One begins in August, the end of August, and the other one mid-September. So you can find that all on our websites under the resources tab and virtual groups. So you had mentioned when we were talking, and both of us are at about a similar age, women who are 40 plus years removed from their abortion, and how, and for me, I've only went through my healing in 2017. I lived a life of wreckage that resulted in addiction and alcoholism. So I went through a lot of recovery, and I thought I was really good. But when I finally I had to go through a healing program if I was going to work in the healing industry, right? I thought I was good. And it wasn't until I went through healing that I realized how not okay I was. So can you speak to that a little bit? And I know that your healing was 20 years ago. Speak about that, and that when people are that decades removed from their abortion experience versus people that are reaching out now days later.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter how long you wait to reach out for help. It matters that you do, and it will be the time that's right for you when you're ready to take it in. And often we do our healing in pieces and over time. So
Mm.
it's not unusual for women to attend more than one abortion healing program, or maybe read a book and then go to a program. And so whatever is your path is the path that's right for you. So I don't want you to feel that there's just one way to heal.
Yeah.
What I have, Karen and I were talking about is I'm 65 years old. My healing at Rachel's Vineyard was 20 years ago. And I look back now, and the healing that I experienced early on at first was about the loss of my infant children, the 3 children, the only children that I would have.
Mhm.
It was about the grief about that, and my self-image, the person who I thought I was, and I not that woman if I had 3 abortions. Um, and it was the opportunity to parent and be a mom, and at that time to be married. So the grief experience, what I was grieving and how I was grieving, was different 20 years ago. As the years have passed, and now at 65, can't believe I'm saying that, at 65, I've noticed over the last 5 years, listening to my friends talk about their children, of course, but their grandchildren, about their daughters-in-law and sons-in-law. And I don't have that as part of my family. And so what I realized is, wow, there's there's this whole phase of grief, or these new layers of grief and loss that I never thought about 20 years ago. So women, even when you feel that you have resolved your abortion from an earlier part of your life, you may find that it's really valuable to be part of a healing program, even after 50 or after 60. So I'd encourage you to give that some real thought.
Wow, Jane, I didn't know any of this about you. This is so great. We are so similar. You know,
Huh.
I never as a child ever thought about that white picket fence kind of dream, but after I had my abortion and my life kind of took a turn for the worst, I ended up marrying a man that I didn't really love, but I wanted to be a mom, right? And after
Yeah.
years of trying, we found out we couldn't have children, and I was devastated. You know, all hope wasn't lost. We had an opportunity to adopt, and that fell through. And that's really when
Oh,
I checked out. You know, the dream was
yeah.
shattered, right? And so I can remember at that moment not being so upset about having the abortion, but being upset that I can't have children, right?
Yeah.
That I'm never
Yeah.
going to be a mom, kind of thing,
Yeah.
what you just related. So, you know, if you're out there and you can relate, you're decades removed from your abortion, and you don't feel like you're at a place like Jane. Jane is an open book here. She's able to share with you all of what she's went through. And that's because of the process of healing that she's been on this
Mhm.
journey for 20 years. You know, reach back out for help, because there can be joy and sadness at the same moment,
Yes.
right? There
Yes,
can
there
be
can.
there can be contentment even though your dream isn't realized. Dreams change,
Yes,
right?
they do.
Dreams change.
Yes, they do.
Thank you so
For
much.
sure.
Yeah. So tell me
Yeah.
what you do. You know, we've talked all about where you came from and stuff. Tell us what you do through Messy Miracles
Yeah.
and the unique relationship that you have with Rachel's Vineyard.
So I have the opportunity. I was a part of the Rachel's Vineyard retreat team in Pittsburgh for close to 20, I guess, 15, 20 years. And when I moved here to Richmond, I connected with the Richmond Rachel's Vineyard team. They're awesome, and they run 2 retreats a year. And they said they were really looking for what we call aftercare. What happens after I've attended the retreat? It's a very intense weekend. And now, wow, I feel like I'm being dropped off a cliff. So I'm grateful that they invited me to be part of their team and to run my book as a 6 or 7 week aftercare program. So we meet. I meet virtually once a week with Rachel's Vineyard teams and the participants from the most recent retreat. And it's a nice kind of transition time from the intensity of the retreat itself to now I can explore a little bit more deeply some of the emotions that are most current for me. And it keeps the connection with the team and with the retreatants that we're with you on the retreat, it keeps it going for some period of time. And that's been very successful. It's been a blessing to me to be able to lead those retreats and or to lead those small groups, to continue the healing, continue the connection, and to continue to support development of our faith as time goes on.
That's a brilliant idea. Because what do we do when we end a group? You know, we don't want to just let them go back into their emotions or back into life, right? We need some kind of continuity, some kind of handoff to community. That's a great idea. We've never done this before, but you've got an author here, people that are watching. So I'd love to open it up. If you guys are watching on Facebook, you can ask a question to Jane. Maybe you want to know a little bit more about her book or what her healing journey was like, or, you know, you want to ask questions about having 3 abortions or anything like that. If you want to ask a question, we have somebody that can bring them to our attention and we can ask them. So think about that. For those of you who are watching, we'd love to hear from you. So we talked a little bit before. You were talking to me about words matter, you know, and so one of the questions that we get so often from people is, what do we say to somebody? How do we start the conversation when somebody discloses to us that they've had an abortion? What would your recommendation be?
Well, I think we definitely meet them where they are. And there's a difference when it's like very fresh versus it might have been something that was a few years ago or that's been buried for many, many years. So we always want to meet the woman where she is and listen carefully to what she's talking about. And I suggest really listening for the emotional experience and asking questions about, you know, what's been some of the impacts that you might have noticed. I think that what's been a blessing for me in working with the women that I've been able to is, especially when it's been multiple abortions, is to really pay attention to when you hear the abortions, is to really check your reaction. I think you talked, Karen, about a reaction you heard recently that was a difficult one.
Yeah, I was sharing. Sharing to a group of people. You know, answering this very question that I just posed to you, and I was sharing the testimony of a girl who disclosed to somebody that she had 10 abortions. And when I said that to the room, it was a pro-life room, the reaction was like, right? Like, we are surprised by that. We're surprised by that. And if that's the way we react, that kills the whole conversation right then and there.
It's first of all, it's so horrifying to yourself to think about that you could do this, and that the trauma of experiencing it 3, 4, 7, 8, 10 or more times is it's very traumatic. So listen when you hear, and for those working in this area, to think about using the word abortions versus abortion. So we help with a woman who's had an abortion. We work with women who've had abortions, because it gives us an opening that, oh, you mean maybe I'm not the only one, because that's a big hurdle to overcome. We think we're the only one. So being careful about the words and then listening to what the woman has to say. And what I have often replied is, oh, that must have been difficult for you. And I just want you to know that it doesn't matter to me how many abortions you've had. And so something along those lines, because it's not about the number of it is about the healing that's possible and that we hold out for women. So I'd just encourage you to, even if you're running small groups, is especially in the introductory part, you might even say something like, you know, it's not uncommon. In fact, up to 50% of women who have one abortion have more than one. So we don't make any judgments about that here. And there's healing possible no matter how many abortions you've had. And so by leading with that can really make a difference and pave the way for that person to come forward at the time that they're ready.
That's really good. And I like that, you know, say, had abortions. I like making it plural from the beginning, not implying that they've had more than one, but that more than one is definitely probable. So we do have a question, Jane. We have the question, can you share more about your book?
Okay, so I mentioned that it covers 19 different emotions that I experienced, and I think many women do. They're fairly short chapters, so I'll begin with a little bit of my story. So my personal story unfolds through all 19 chapters. So you'll hear about that dream that I had, and what happened as my career progressed, and my marriage, and then my eventual divorce. You won't hear about that I'm remarried because I wrote the book before that, but that's a joy to share. So you'll hear about the steps that I took for healing, the difficulties that I had to face. You know, my career fell apart. I became divorced. I had to find a new career. I mean, there was a lot attached to that abortion. So I share that. Each chapter has what I might call reflection exercises. So something that if this emotion particularly hits you, you can look at and go deeper. And then there's a Bible verse and a prayer. So you can pick through the book and find the emotions that seem to resonate the most with you and go deeper there. You don't have to read it in any order. And the idea of it is for you to realize that there's nothing wrong with you when you're feeling these intense emotions. You know, Karen, God blessed us with emotions as signals of something else going on. And on these difficult emotions, thankfully, there's signals that it's not all right with us. Something is going on. So I hope that in reading the book, whether you're reading about a regret or confusion or shame or guilt, that you'll understand that I'm not alone and that there's nothing wrong with this emotion, but it's a signal to something deeper. And hopefully I take you to a safe place to look with that.
Yeah, you guys, if you guys are watching, I mean, I know that you are watching, this is so good. I mean, this is a video that you want to share on your Facebook page, on your YouTube page, and, you know, tag all your friends. This is such a compelling and passionate and thoughtful conversation that we're having right now, that if there's somebody, I mean, 1 in 4 women by the age of 45 will have an abortion. Whether you know it or not, somebody you know has been touched by abortion, has been impacted by abortion. Share this Facebook Live, because Jane has just shown you the face of compassion for hurting people in her words and her facial expressions. This is very inviting for somebody who's hurting to watch. So I just encourage you to share it. We do have a confirmation. Somebody said it's very interesting that one letter, that S on the end of the word abortion, can change the whole conversation. I just wanted to give you that feedback. And we have another question. Do you work through the book in the group, or do you assign homework and review in the group?
So I assign, it's usually like 3 to 5 of the chapters. Now that might only be 15 pages of the book to read. So if they're clusters of emotions. And so I encourage the participants in the small group to read the chapters, or at least focus on the chapters that they most connect with. And then when we come together, we discuss a little bit about each of those chapters assigned for that day. Usually, we kind of focus on 1 or 2. And women are free to share or not. Sometimes people can participate better for themselves if they listen more at the beginning till they feel safe, because of course it's all confidential. But then we work through the questions. We ask about how that emotion, say, of anger affected them early on, how they saw anger develop through their life, and even now, how anger might be present and kind of guiding their life.
Yeah, that's really good.
Did I answer that fully? I hope.
I think so. Yeah, that you assign homework. So there's different techniques, you know, in some virtual groups or in some groups, we go through the chapter together on that particular week. And other times we assign homework ahead of time and then just really dig into the questions and the reflection pieces. So I think you answered that well. Here's a question. I'm going to ask it and then I want to qualify it. It says, does healing look different for those who have experienced multiple abortions? I am particularly thinking about the celebration of life ceremony and the naming of your child. Now, I know your book, Jane, does not have a celebration of life chapter in it, but you have gone through Rachel's Vineyard where there is that kind of naming ceremony. So can you address that from that perspective?
You're talking about my book or the healing. Just does
So
it look different if you're a multiple?
yes,
Yeah.
especially with separating them out and being able to heal from them
Oh,
individually or
yeah.
collectively, or how does that look?
Yeah. Yeah. So in my Rachel's Vineyard, you may be familiar that you receive a bereavement doll, and I took 3 bereavement dolls. It was all a little overwhelming, and I probably, when I look back, I was grieving the totality of them. As time has gone on, I believe that the Holy Spirit has revealed to me more individually about my children, Anne, James, and Jane, as I have named them. And so, does the healing look different? I think the core of healing is the same. It's the what led up to the abortion, the loss itself, how it has impacted you and your relationships, a connection with your child. I think with multiple abortions, it adds a layer of guilt and shame because, geez, why didn't I learn from the first one or the second or beyond? So I think uh, that layers over it. And I think it, as I was in my case, I think it kept me hidden, or like in the closet longer, because it just was too horrifying to admit that there were 3 abortions.
Yeah.
Um,
So if I can summarize what I think I heard you just say is that um, initially healing just from abortion itself was kind of, and this is what my experience has been like and what others have told me that have had multiple abortions. It's like you first come to terms with just the fact that you had an abortion, whether it was one
yeah,
or
that's
three,
well
right?
said.
And
Yeah,
so you're going through that healing, just coming to terms with that fact. And then as you continue in healing, and as you so brilliantly said, Jane, it's not a one and done. Healing is a lifetime commitment,
mhm,
right? Whether
yeah,
it's healing from abortion or just personal growth and emotional development, right? We
yeah,
all have the onions never peeled back until we're at
yeah.
home with Jesus,
That's
right? So
right. That's
um,
right.
and then it sounded to me like as you continued on that journey, you were able to individualize those experiences and really pay more attention to each one individually, if that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, it is, and you put it better than I did. And the piece that I want to add is, in my case, the father of each child was different, and so there was a different set of circumstances, and I was at a different stage of life. So as the years have passed, and I have looked more closely at each one of those relationships and where I was at that point in my life, there were additional circumstances to come to grips with, and the responsibilities um,
Yeah.
looked, looked differently. So in that sense, it was also different because those abortions occurred over about a 10-year period
Yeah.
in
And you
my
were in
life.
different stages in your life, right?
I
You
was,
were in different places in your life. So that definitely does contribute to it as well. We could go
yeah.
on forever, but I just
Oh,
want you to leave the audience with, and we might have to bring you back because the feedback
I'd
we're
love
getting
it.
is that this is
Oh,
the best show so far. I'm blown
oh,
away. Most
oh,
beautiful, beneficial of
oh,
the
so
Facebook lives that they've
thank
watched. So
you.
be
Thank
encouraged by
you.
that, please do. So if you so there's a lot of different people that could be watching. There's probably pregnancy
Yes.
centers, staff and volunteers, people that work in the
Hmm.
industry, other authors,
Hmm.
people who do healing, facilitate healing groups. And there could be people out
Hmm.
there watching that have had an abortion and haven't had the opportunity to go through healing left. So in these
Yeah.
final moments, what would you like to say to the people that are watching today?
Yeah. So the subtitle to my book is Healing and Hope After Abortion. And when we become involved in abortion, it changes you, it changes your life, and it skews what you believe life can be and what it can offer and what you can have in life. And what I want you to know, and those of us that have been through healing, is that there is so much more to life after healing, that you can experience joy and peace and love. You can be loving, give and receive love. There is just so much more possible for you. And you may not recognize what it is, but it's available. And for those of you that are working in the abortion healing ministries, I thank you for that, and hold out that hope that it's not just about the difficulty and the grief of going through, and that's tough, as you said, Karen, but it's worth it because there's something else on the other side. I will always wonder what my life would have been like if I had 3 children. I just, it's a regret that I have, and I still have just a wonderful life. God doesn't punish me um, with with a difficult life. So there's hope after healing. And I'm so excited that you're listening and that you're going to take this step, or that you're going to help others take this step.
Yeah.
God bless.
So let me remind you that Jane presented at our virtual conference that ended the beginning of August. It's still time to get a premium pass. You have, I don't know, 70 days still to watch all of the content. So
Great.
please go to the website that's being shown on the screen right now and get that premium pass for yourself. Yeah, and so this has been great, Jane. I'm so excited that you've here.
I'm
People
so
are still
blessed.
coming on. People are still sharing. Make sure you share. Look at our
Good.
website. Look at
Please
the virtual
do.
groups that we have. Make sure you register for one of the groups that Jane's going to be doing. If you want to learn more about her book, join as a participant for her group,
Yeah,
and you'll find out
that'd
what
be
her
so great.
about. Then maybe you can take it back to your ministry or your pregnancy center and facilitate it for that girl who's not in touch with her emotions, right? We're talking about options here, people, so we can elevate our options. So thank you so much for joining us. Next week, I'm very excited to have Perry Underwood. He was also a conference speaker. He is the founder of Abbate, and he comes with a perspective unlike a woman can come with. So join me next week, every Tuesday, 4 p.m. Next week, it's with Perry Underwood on Abbate. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to share and tag. Thank you, guys. See you next week.